Hello and welcome. My name is Al Barrows, and this is UFO-Disclosure, the podcast that's meant to show an average person's reaction to all the UFO, UAP news from everywhere and anywhere. Today, I'd like to relate something that I saw on Street of Silence. It involves one of the strangest extraterrestrials ever reported. It's been nicknamed the Michelin Man because of its resemblance to the mascot for the Michelin Tire Company. In 1977, a young teenager named Louise Stovall was visiting her grandmother's home. That night, Louise was sitting on the couch watching TV when she would see a strange light coming from the window. Confused as to what it was, Louise got up and walked over to the window to get a better look. At the window, Louise saw what appeared to look like a bright star or flame rising just to the left of Lillian Cavett Elementary School. Then the craft began hovering down behind the fence that separates her grandmother's home and the school. It would continue to descend until it came within a few inches of the ground. At this point, Louise yelled to her grandmother, Alice Buckner, to come over and see the craft. The two then moved over to the front door to get a better view. The craft then ascended, went over the school fence and the street, and landed in Alice's yard. At this point, the two went out into the yard to investigate further. The craft was not big, around 6 feet long, and rounded at the end, shaped like a capsule. A bright light came from inside it, and it appeared to have a transparent front with some type of entity inside. At this time, Alice and Louise were more curious than scared, and were around 50 feet away. Then, the craft slowly hovered toward them, only around 10 feet or so in the air. Inside the craft, they could see what was inside. There was a humanoid behind some bars. It was gray in color and puffy looking, like a Michelin Man. The two couldn't make out any facial features, nor did they see if it had any hands. It appeared to be bent over forward and holding some type of control, although they weren't sure on this. Alice was very curious, and at this point, the craft was just several feet away. Alice walked up and underneath it and tried to touch the bottom, but was a few feet shy as she reached up. The craft appeared to ascend a bit more as well. In front of the object, Alice would also get a better view of the occupant as well. It was standing on some sort of light or flame and wore a puffy suit. The being was quite small, around 3 to 4 feet, a typical height reported for these entities. Despite the close encounter, the beam never moved, even in the slightest, leading some to believe it was some type of robot. The craft would continue to float slowly away. First, it went over Alice's carport, and then it went over the tree lines. Alice and Louise went out and watched the craft float up into the sky for some time. They were able to do this because the light from the craft was so bright it was easily distinguishable from the stars. So Alice and Louise's story is quite incredible, but there were other witnesses. Another individual in the Tucson, Arizona area would spot the craft, providing further support for their story. Ms. Desi Turner, who was Alice's next-door neighbor. Around 7:30 p.m., Desi was brushing her teeth when she saw a strange light coming through her curtains. Initially, she thought it was a car turning around in her driveway, but after a few minutes, she became suspicious and went over to get a better look. She opened the curtains, and Desi was stunned to see a bright cigar-shaped object. She looked over and saw Alice and Louise in the yard looking at the craft. Desi would estimate the object to be about 6 feet long and 2 to 2.5 feet wide. She ran inside and called the police and the TV station, but to her surprise, no one came. The craft would soon hover away, and unlike Alice and Louise, Desi did not stick around and watch. With multiple independent witnesses, the case surely seems very credible. All three witnesses would report seeing multiple helicopters, presumably military aircraft, flying around the area, something highly unusual. Alice would check with the police station, and they confirmed they did not have any up in the sky that night, which strongly suggests that they were military choppers. So as strange as this case might appear to you, There have been a number of Michelin Man extraterrestrial cases, all between 1950 and 1970. One of the first cases happened in Bolton, England in 1962. Henry Thomas, then a young boy, spotted three short, bulky humanoids looking into a window. The beings didn't harm him in any way, and later on he sketched what he saw that day. Another encounter happened in 1960 in Spain. A teacher named Miguel Sabalis spotted two of these Michelin men crossing the road. Interestingly, in this case, one was short and one was tall. One of the more famous encounters happened in France, July the 31st, 1968. Farmer Luc Fontaine saw a blue and white craft near Plant de Fraise. Inside the craft, he spotted two small Michelin men. In this case, the landing site and Fontaine's clothing both contained radioactive traces after the event. In time, this case became a popular one in France. So what is the Michelin Man extraterrestrial exactly? In general, there are three main theories. The first is that these are some type of alien species, one that seems relatively harmless. Individuals who encounter these beings often experience phenomena such as heat, paralysis, electrical interference like car engines and lights failing. Like many other encounters, there are stories of missing time and eerie silence when people see these beings. The second theory is that the Michelin men are simply suits worn by biologic ETs. The thought here is that the beings cannot survive in Earth's atmosphere and need to wear these for whatever reason. The third theory is that these Michelin men are actually humans or military testing out some type of suit. This is one of the less popular theories, but some suggest the Michelin men are some type of suit that the military tested out for some reason. The final theory is that these beings are robotic in nature, but ultimately are being controlled by ETs. This is evidenced by the behavior of the beings in many of the stories. So what exactly did Alice and Louise see back in 1977 in Tucson, Arizona? If it truly was an extraterrestrial, it seemed to have moved on, because Michelin Man extraterrestrial reports have stopped. My name is Al Barrows. This has been UFO Disclosure. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.